Good evening and welcome to Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership's first annual State of the District Community Forum. I'm Amy Evans, President of the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, for being engaged in this public dialogue, and showing support for quality public education. We'd also like to thank our business supporters tonight, Java on Sherman for providing refreshments. Please remember to help yourself. And Bunkhouse Media for recording this forum. Finally, and most importantly, we'd like to thank Coeur d'Alene School District Administration for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership is an independent, nonprofit partnership of parents, business leaders, and community members driven by the belief that every student in our district deserves a quality public education. We seek to unite the community in support of excellence in public education, keep the community informed about educational developments, and advocate on a local and state level for superior public schools. In recent months, we have been deeply involved in uniting service groups and promoting volunteerism in our area elementary schools, such as Borah Elementary, where we launched our Volunteers in Play program, VIP. Coeur Group and Kootenai County Young Professionals are providing volunteers in both reading and math and noon recess play. We are currently seeking volunteers to mentor students at the middle schools. This community forum fulfills an important part of our mission of fostering dialogue between the community and school district and helping to inform the community on important educational developments. You can learn more about CEP by visiting our table in the back. Right there we have a membership table, or visiting our website, cdaep.org. We strongly encourage you to become a member of Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership tonight or volunteer with us. Please visit the city's website under Channel 19's tab for a listing of program times of tonight's forum. Tonight we have a valuable opportunity to hear updates on 4 key topics from the Coeur d'Alene District Administrators. We have Superintendent Hazel Bauman, Associate Superintendent Matt Handelman, and Chief Operating Officer Wendell Wardell. Specifically, we will learn about and be able to ask questions regarding, first, the upcoming Maintenance and Operations Levy, revisions to the Common Core curriculum, a finance and facilities constructions update, and public safety in our schools. Scott Fisher of Architects West is also available to answer questions after the forum. He has brought the most recent round of draft designs for the upcoming remodels of Sorensen Elementary and Canfield Middle Schools. Also in the audience tonight, we'd like to welcome our current school board members that are here with us. So thanks so much for joining us.
Good evening. My name is Jason Wing, and I'm Vice President of the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership. And I'd like to take a few moments to walk us through the format for tonight's forum. As Amy indicated, we'll cover 4 key topics tonight. Each topic discussion will last about 10 minutes and will be followed immediately by a 5-minute question and answer period. During each key topic discussion, members of our audience can ask questions by writing down a question on the event brochure that was provided or note cards. Please raise your hand right now if you would like a note card, event brochure, or pens, and Chris Meyer and Nancy Hart, 2 CEP members, can provide those materials for you so you can ask questions. Questions related to a topic should be passed to the end of each row before the conclusion of each topic discussion. Just before the end of a topic discussion, again, Chris Meyer and Nancy Hart will collect the questions and deliver those to Amy and I. Because we'll not be able to, I'm sure, ask all of the questions to the administrators tonight that are posed to them, we'll prioritize questions based on what appears to be the public interest and relevance to the topic area. However, we will give all of the questions collected tonight to the school district. We ask that there are no disrespectful outbursts or interruptions of the speakers or questions made out of turn tonight. Suffice it to say that anyone who disrupts a speaker will be asked to leave the forum. Without further ado, our first topic involves the upcoming Maintenance and Operations Levy, which will be addressed by Superintendent Hazel Bauman. Superintendent Bauman has been our district superintendent since July of 2008. Dr. Bauman has 37 years of experience in public and higher education, including 7 years as an assistant superintendent. She has also served as Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Director of Elementary Education. Will you join me in giving a warm welcome to Superintendent Hazel Bauman?
Thank you, Amy and Jason, and thank you to the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership for hosting this event. We always take invitations very, very warmly into our hearts and seriously when we're asked to come out into the community and talk about, obviously, our life work and what is near and dear to us, which is the teaching and learning of the 10,200 boys and girls that you entrust to us every day, at least 180 days of the school year. So it's my privilege to be here this evening, and I would like to reiterate Amy's welcome to the current trustees, Chairman Tom Hamilton, Vice Chair Terry Seymour, Trustee Ann Seddon, and I just saw Trustee Jim Hightower walk in. Thank you for also being here this evening. I have about 12 slides in about 10 minutes, so I will move quickly. This is a drill that many of you have probably been through and heard before, because this is not our first levy. We have been running maintenance and operations levies in this district for almost 3 decades. And a big thank you to the community, because for the most part, almost always, the community steps up and says, yes, we will support the school district and the schools with our taxes, because we want more than that which the state provides for the boys and girls of our community. So what we will go through is, what does the levy support? In a minute I'll talk about the specifics of the dates and the logistics. You can see there's just a plethora of issues, supplies, things that are important like libraries, remediation for kids that are falling behind, and basically it has become an essential funding mechanism for us. As we have seen, and you'll see in a minute on a slide, the decline in state revenues, the local support has become more and more essential. And I want to tie this in, because really the meat of the matter is, are you, as our taxpayers and our patrons, getting a good value for the taxes that you support us with? And I'll be able to show you that, yes, indeed you are, because all of the programs listed above aid in our students' academic success. Next slide. Uh-oh. Okay. One of the main ways that we are able to look at academic success in Idaho, and actually across the nation, is with standardized tests. And I clearly know that not everything that's important in schools is reflected in these tests, but it does allow us to compare apples to apples. This is the Idaho Standards Achievement Test in the areas of language usage, math, and reading, and a big thanks to Mike Nelson, who put these bars and charts together. And I just want to show you that when you compare Coeur d'Alene to districts of similar size across Idaho, that we do continue to be the highest performing large school district in the state of Idaho. And you see the aggregate scores of in the extreme on my left bar compared to other large school districts across Idaho. And we have maintained this position of being such a high performing school district on the ISAT for a number of years. So we do well. Another indicator is the Idaho Reading Indicator, which is a reading test we give to our kindergarten through 3rd grade students each year. This is a state test also, and you can see again that in kindergarten and 1st grade, Coeur d'Alene outperforms all the other school districts. We do drop down in 2nd and 3rd grade, and we are working on that very diligently with instructional coaches and professional development and providing resources to teachers. And again, it is the levy that will enable us to have those resources available to our teachers and to our schools to continue to improve the performance of students in reading. Graduation rate is another indication of how a school system is doing. It's sort of interesting, because if you think about it and you didn't have graduation rate, it would be easy to raise standards really high, be very academically focused, but literally force the underachieving children out of the system. And that would not be indicative of a high-performing school system that is reaching out to all children, even those that are struggling academically. So again, you see that you have our high schools there outlined in blue and gray, and with the red square is Project, which you know is our alternative high school. And I want to make special note of that. You obviously see that Project lags behind the other two schools in graduation rate, but look at the last several years' trajectory. I mean, something is going very right in that school, and so kudos to Rosie Astorkia and her staff for the work that they are doing there. And again, the Coeur d'Alene School District is outperforming the state in graduation rates. You may have heard about the New Star rating, and the New Star rating tries to, if you will, synthesize all of the indications of a school and whether they are performing well. It does also take into account, which we're very pleased as educators to note, that growth is factored into this. So it's not just how many children are proficient on the Idaho Reading Indicator or on the ISAT, but in fact, how much did they grow over the last year, which is very, very powerful data. And as you can see, we have 5 stars is the highest rating that the state will give. And as you can see, we have a number of 5-star schools. And in fact, being the competitive person that I am, I went through and counted all the 5-star schools in each district. And there is no district in Idaho that has more 5-star schools than Coeur d'Alene. Think about that. There are districts that are twice and 3 times and 4 times our size, and they don't have as many 5-star schools as we do. Obviously, we've got a couple of areas where we have some 2-star and 3-star schools, and we will be and are very intentional in our improvement efforts to make those schools become as successful as they possibly can. Without going into detail on this one, I just wanted to show you that besides the test data and the graduation rates, we also are very interested in what the perceptions of the district are. And so every year we survey parents, students, and staff. And that's a fairly large undertaking with a survey from the Center for Educational Effectiveness. This is just a quick snapshot of how we do, and again, I won't go into it, but we really look at that data across those 3 demographics and then establish goals to improve our customer service, our high expectations, how we are communicating with parents, and in fact, safety, school safety, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the evening, has been an area that parents and students have identified over the years as a concern, and we work hard to address that. So a little bit more about the specifics of the levy. The levy will be on March the 12th, and basically what this is a mechanism by which we ask property taxpayers if they will voluntarily increase their property tax to, if you will, fill in the gap of funding left by the inadequate revenue stream from the state of Idaho. And so consequently, people are interested, well, how much will this cost me? And so what we have here is a chart that shows that the levy rate for every $1,000 of taxable value in your home will be $1.87. And then we thought, well, you might want to compare that to other districts around the state. Are you paying exorbitant amount of taxes, or is it reasonable? And as you can see, we are not the lowest, but we by far are certainly not the highest, and we think that $1.87 per thousand for all of the programs and all of the resources that this levy enables us to put into our schools is a good buy. Here we go again with the percentage of the levy to the general fund. I have to tell you that this one is a little scary for me. It is 21% of our general fund. And I wish it were not so, because obviously levies are a bit of a gamble. You work hard to get the word out, and we do every year, and our community has been tremendously supportive. But to have 21% of the budget riding on a one moment in time, March the 12th vote, keeps me awake at night, because our school district would not be the same without it. This is the graph that I think probably tells it best of all, and it shows the declining state revenue. If you look in the 2008-2009, the sort of salmon-colored, I guess you'd call it, bar, was at its peak then at $50 million worth of state revenue, and you can see that the last year that we have the complete data for, 2011, 2012, we are down to $40 million of state revenue. So there's been a $10 million cut, a 20% cut in state revenue, and that is why we have asked in the last few years for our community to increase their support, and we're thankful. The other thing I want you to draw attention to, and I think Wendell will talk a little bit more about this, is the red at the top was one-time dollars that came to us 2 or 3 years ago from the federal government. I think you might have heard of it as ARA, the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act, money that came and flowed through. And that money, as you can see, has basically dried up from a high of $6 million to actually this next fiscal year there will be $0 in that category. So that makes the levy even more vital. So what will this cost you as a taxpayer? As you know, and we'll talk about this in a minute, year one of the levy, the trustees approved to have the ballot read and they passed a resolution a few weeks ago to actually add $1.4 million to year one of the levy. So that will make it $14.2, almost $14.3 million. And then it will drop back down to the replacement levy of $12.9 million that the voters approved 2 years ago in 2011. So the year one with the increase will cost $2.08 per thousand of taxable value. And if you have a $200,000 home with a homeowner's exemption, that would be an annual cost of $247.52. Year two, when it drops back to $12.9 million, that drops then to $1.87 per thousand. Again, you've seen this slide before, but this is pretty pivotal. This is what the levy supports. It is our lifeblood. It's 21% of our budget. This school district would absolutely not resemble what you have come to know and what I have come to know and love over the years that I've worked as your superintendent and as an administrator in this district. It is absolutely essential to keeping the good work going that is happening in the classrooms and in the schools of the Coeur d'Alene School District. Oh, there's just a picture of the ballot. That's what will be facing you when you walk into the polling place on March the 12th. But also I want to remind you that absentee voting is a very powerful way to vote as we get busy and our lives take on extra things that we know with children. And if you want to cast an absentee ballot, that's the way to do it.
Thank you, Superintendent Bauman. While the questions are collected from the audience, maybe I'll start with a question I think is probably near and dear to a lot of people's minds. It's been said that the district has certain contingency plans in the event that an M&O levy fails. What are those contingency plans? What in fact would the district look like in the event that a M&O levy failed?
Well, first of all, a lot of the Coeur d'Alene School District budget is mandated through a variety of legal or contractual obligations. So we have to be mindful that those legal and contractual obligations would have to be honored. And so what then you are left with is looking at staff, the number of staff that we hire, both certificated and support staff, and there would unfortunately have to be a reduction in that number. You would have to then, and those staff, of course, provide programs and support to our students. So that would mean programs and support to our students would have to be greatly reduced. The other piece that we know about is that we have shrunk our budget, as you could see from that declining chart, and a lot of the what might have been called discretionary costs really are no longer with us anymore. We really have turned down the thermostat. We have literally removed light bulbs from the fixtures in classrooms, and there aren't a lot of those areas now to go. And then the last area is that we have enjoyed a very positive relationship with the Coeur d'Alene Education Association, the teachers union, and we anticipate that relationship will continue through negotiations this year, and that there are possible savings that can also be found through that process.
Okay. Another question is can you share different ways the voters can participate in the March 12th election? Where would they vote day of, and how can they vote absentee?
Well, interestingly enough, the election process changed a few years ago, and we used to run our own elections, and now the county elections office is in charge of all the elections. So along with that change, the voting places changed. So you now will be voting in your regular precinct, where you would have voted in the general election. Although, having said that, the caveat is that the number of polling places has been shrunk because the turnout won't be as large for this kind of an election as a general election. So you need to double check, because it could be that your regular precinct polling place is not up and running for this election. So finding out where you vote is one. Getting the word out, because it's an off date, it's March the 12th, not everybody's aware. The media does a really good job of getting the word out. We send out a direct mail piece, but word of mouth and making sure people know that the election is March 12th is really, really important.
We'll take one more question on this topic. This is from Jennifer Westervelt. What specific changes has the school district made since the last levy, and why are we always having to renew levies?
That's a great question. Well, we've made lots of changes since the last levy. We have shrunk our staff. We have significantly less teachers, and as a result of that, you see that class size has gone up. We have also shrunk our support staff, and so again, you see programs and support having been compromised because of those shrinking resources. And as I mentioned before, our maintenance budget, Bryan Martin, who's the director of our maintenance and facilities, will tell you that he just doesn't have the same amount of money that he had before to clean and to maintain and repair the facilities. We have delayed purchasing buses, which obviously the bus issue I know is could be a whole other evening in and of itself, but that is an area where we have saved money too. And we have dipped into our, thank you, Matt, into our contingency and reserve fund balance, so that as one-time money to try and bridge the gap. You know, the economy is recovering, and that has always been our forecasting, and our work is just as you do in your own household, is what can we do to bridge the gap until the economy recovers and the state replaces some of the lost funds. It's just taken longer than we had anticipated. Why do we continue then to have levies? And that's the exact same reason. As the state funding drops off and hasn't been replenished, we go to our community and say, here is what the levy gets you. This is what services and resources it provides for our boys and girls. Do you want to support this with your tax dollars? And thankfully, our community has been tremendously supportive over the last 3 decades.
By law, we have to every 2 years.
The levy?
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt reminds me that the reason it's a 2-year levy, or it could be a 1-year levy, is that's the statute and that's the laws that we live in. We can't run it for more than that amount of time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our second topic tonight, and that is Common Core curriculum. And we're going to discuss the proposed changes to Common Core, which will be addressed by Associate Superintendent Matt Handelman. And Mr. Handelman is in his 3rd year with the Coeur d'Alene Public Schools. In addition to fulfilling the role of Associate Superintendent, he is both the Curriculum Director and Director of Elementary Education. Mr. Handelman has been an educator for almost 25 years, including 14 years as a principal in Spokane, Seattle, and Edmonds, Washington, and prior to that, a teacher in Washington, Oregon, and New York. Mr. Handelman has 3 children who attend public school in 3rd, 6th, and 10th grades. Thank you.
Where's jogging?
It must mean something.
That's not good. Or may not be good. There you go. There we are. So Hazel said that she had 12 slides to do in about 10 or 15 minutes. I have about 22. So
I'll try my best. So the Common Core, hopefully you've heard something about the Common Core. There was actually recently an article in the Spokesman Review about the Common Core, and we put out some information about it in that very first back-to-school publication in the Coeur d'Alene Press as well. And I know individual teachers and schools are sort of advertising that this is upon us. So I'm trying to give you a little background of both what it is, where it's come from, and what we're doing about it. So first of all, there's an impression that it's a national curriculum. And there's a fine line between what's national and what's really a state-led initiative. It actually was something, it was an effort that was put together by a couple of different groups. You'll see up there the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief School State Officers. And it's been done in collaboration with a number of other important stakeholders, as you see. The Common Core, that's a big long paragraph, but I put in red some of the key ideas in it about having consistent, clear understanding of what students are expected to learn across state lines. Now we're talking about something that's robust and relevant, key knowledge and skills, and there's a lot of talk about college and career readiness, ensuring that students, when they leave our system, are ready for that next step. So the Common Core, one of the goals of the Common Core is to have fewer, higher, and clearer standards. That's true in some areas, and in some areas the standards still seem like they're pretty long, and it's a long list of things that we want students to be able to know and do when they finish with us. They are, again, according to research, aligned with college and work expectations. A big key has to do with higher order thinking, moving along what we call Bloom's taxonomy of knowledge and skills, and moving away from just knowledge-based and into more application, synthesis, and really higher level thinking and working. You can see that they're internationally benchmarked, so we're looking to be competitive in the global economy, and as I said, research-based. So what are some benefits? Well, the Common Core standards are pretty specific, and there's also other documents that help us what we call deconstruct and really break down and understand what those mean. The more we can understand as educators what those standards are, the more we can help the students understand what it is they need to know and be able to do. We've been working on that for years in the Coeur d'Alene School District, what we call clear targets and putting our learning objectives up on the board and making sure the students are clear. This makes it that much clearer for us. Again, trying to have a manageable number. This greater pool of resources, because there are so many states involved, we have the opportunity to share resources and see what's going on in other places that are implementing this. To date, we could only be looking at what's happening in Idaho to help us in implementing our state standards. Now we can look across, and I can tell you in the work that we've done with teachers this year, we've reached out and looked at states that have already been working on this, such as North Carolina and Kentucky, and really dipping into that pool of resources. Another important resource is the publishers of textbooks, where whereas it used to be the biggest states that drove the textbook companies to what was the content of their textbooks, now we'll have a big consortium of states who are helping to drive that instead of just one or two states that really drive it. So we're looking forward to the publishers catching up with the Common Core and having materials that we won't have to fit into our curriculum, but that will fit our curriculum. Again, the collaboration, collegiality, both among and between our schools. You know, we have collaboration, which is an incredibly important piece every week for our teachers. We can also reach out again across the districts and also across states. The consistent equitable learning experience, we just think, you know, there's a lot of mobility these days, and not just within our community, but students are moving, families are moving all the time, and to be able to say that in 4th grade you're going to be hitting these things whether you're in Florida or Nebraska. Well, Nebraska is a bad example because it's one of the states that didn't join in, but Florida or Illinois or Idaho doesn't make a difference. You're going to come with the same knowledge base and the same background, similar, and be able to move from that point on. So as I mentioned, 45 states have adopted. Nebraska is one of the ones that didn't. I know that Alaska and Texas are a couple others, and Wisconsin. But again, the power of all those states having the similar resources is going to be pretty incredible as time goes on. Our timeline here in Idaho is to be implementing by this coming fall, this fall. So we've been hard at work working on this. Another important piece, Hazel was showing data about the ISAT and the IRI. Now the IRI will still be with us, but the ISAT is being replaced. And you'll see that the replacement, which is called the Smarter Balanced Assessment, SBAC, S-B-A-C, is going to be in place in the 2014-15 school year. So it's sort of interesting. We're going to be teaching toward one set of standards and still assessing on the old set. And again, that was a decision that we didn't make, but that was made at the state level. One other big change with the SBAC is that it used to be the sort of graduation or exit exam was in 10th grade, and now it's moving to 11th grade. There's also a promise from the Smarter Balanced Consortium of what we call formative and end of course assessments, testing students along the way in individual courses and not just that one point in time that Hazel mentioned before. So what's included in the Common Core? This is really big. English, language arts, and math. And you'll notice in that top bullet that it very specifically says, in addition to English language arts, it's also literacy in those other subject areas. So it hasn't been just our English language arts and math teachers working on figuring out the core curriculum, but part of the idea is that everyone has a stake in this, in helping students with their literacy skills. So we've been working hard at finding ways to integrate the English language arts standards into our current social studies, science, PTE, music, art, PE classes across the district. On the bottom, you can see a bullet that says that the Common Core is actually coming in these other areas, social studies and science, but they haven't been published yet. We've seen some quasi drafts, but nothing has been enough for us to see really what's coming with that. For ELA, English Language Arts, you'll see there are several sections: reading, writing, language, speaking and listening, media and technology. And the two bottom bullets really are pointing to some changes. There's more focus on informational text. I was just in a classroom today that was working hard on this, making sure students are both digging into informational text and understanding how to do that. Part of the idea behind this is that once we're out of school, most of the reading we have to do for our jobs is informational text, and it's not fiction. It's real life. So that's part of the reason for that. It doesn't mean we're getting rid of the classics by any means. It's just that we want to make sure that our students are ready post their K-12 education for college and career. Also, the importance of citing evidence. So really digging into text and making sure that they can prove what they think. With math, I'm not going to read through all of these, but these are some of what they call the 8 standards of mathematical practice. They're sort of big ideas in math, and how students will have to be, again, thinking higher level and thinking strategically, and in addition to knowing all their facts, need to be able to put them to work. Here's a nutshell of the K-5 and the middle school and high school experience, really creating that solid foundation, understanding and doing some fluency work in the whole numbers, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fractions and decimals. Really, the idea is narrowing the focus, moving some other things toward the middle school. Now, that doesn't mean that everything's moving up, because some things are moving down. For example, multiplication facts right now have been for a long time a 4th grade standard. They're going to be moving to 3rd grade. So multiplication division fact. So again, there's increased rigor, but depth of rigor as well. Thank you. So what we've been doing to prepare for this, we have had teachers who are identified by administrators as leaders working in teams to research what other districts have done, as I mentioned, across the states. And what we really needed to do was make sure we are understanding what the curriculum is and also aligning the board-approved materials that we have with the Common Core. So that's been the big piece. And with that, we have to identify where are there gaps, what can we not cover, what do we need to move from grade level to grade level. We've been going through a process where that has been looping out to all the grade level colleagues. So fourth grade, for example, a couple of teachers have worked on math and a couple on language arts, and they've looped out and gotten feedback, and we're going through a continual process of improvement on that. And we're going to be continuing to work on drafts throughout this year and into our implementation. So currently, there are already teachers who are learning and trying some of these things out in their classrooms. The one place that we've implemented this year across the district is in K2 mathematics. We decided to just jump right in. We're providing professional development for those teachers and working with the Common Core curriculum right now, which will help launch us into next year. So as I mentioned, we have to provide professional development. We have I talked about the written curriculum and the tested curriculum. This is really what we call the taught curriculum, the third leg of our triangle. And really the big change is how teachers are teaching. So we need to make sure we're providing professional development. Hazel mentioned instructional coaches. We also have mini courses for teachers, which have focused in K2 math this year, but you see that we have some others in plans for next year that we're just putting together now so teachers are aware how we're going to support them next year. Just a quick preview of the Smarter Balanced. One thing that you'll see, comparison, is that there's more time for your kids in testing, which there are pros and cons. The test itself is much more engaging. There are a lot of, you'll see in a second some examples. But the big change is this performance task, which is right in the middle there, which is actually something that happens in class. And we don't know a lot about that piece already, but the other pieces that we do know about, I'll show you a little bit of. The SBAC, there are 27 states that are using the SBAC. This year, there's been some pilot testing that a couple of our schools have been able to take part in. And as I said, it's going to be implemented in the 2014-15 school year, so the spring of 2015. The other states have something called the PARC, the PARC Consortium. There was just two different directions it went. There's talk that they might combine eventually. There are 4 types of questions in the SBAC. In the ISAT, there's one type of question. It's multiple choice, and you fill in one bubble. Here, there are 4 different kinds, and even the selected response, which is the multiple choice, is a little different. So go ahead, Laura. Thank you. With the selected response, the biggest change that you'll see is that there may be more than one correct answer. Again, higher level thinking. You can't just assume, oh, I found the one answer and it's right. So that's the biggest change, and that'll be a big part of it. Go ahead, Laura.
Sorry.
Constructed response, students will actually have...
I was still trying to figure out.
Yeah. Gene will give you time later. Yeah. Remediation. Constructed response, basically what it means is it's a written answer. It might be short, it might be long. This one just shows that there's a beginning of a story shown, and the student needs to write a possible ending of the story that makes sense to the rest of it. And then technology enhanced, this is part of the engaging part of it, that students will actually be able to click and drag. Right now they take the ISAT on a computer, but again, they just punch a button. Here they're going to actually be clicking and dragging correct answers, and if you had time for this, it's sort of an interesting one, because the correct answer for the first bag there are none. So you could drag a bottle into that and be incorrect. You can get partial credit for these. Unlike the ISAT, you either get it or you don't. So we're working on putting together an assessment program that's going to align with this. The first thing that we're doing is making sure our end-of-course assessments, our current assessments for the district, are aligned with the kinds of questions you just saw. And we're going to backtrack on that, as you'll see, starting in the next year, piloting some formative assessments along the way so students are ready for this. And we are going through assessment training. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, this top 40 that's mentioned here is going through an all-day training provided by the state through a grant that we are part of. And again, they're going to help lead that writing of our assessments, just like the teachers are at the lead of writing the curriculum. In a nutshell.
Thank you, Mr. Handelman. And if you have any questions, if you want to pass them to the end of your row, and a CEP board member will be along to pick them up. But we have one question to begin with. Has the state given any additional direction, guidance, or support for implementing the Common Core?
The state has given some. They're trying to catch up as well. They do have a website that has some resources for us that we're tapping into. There hasn't been any extra money for professional development, but I do know, there is the governor's task force and the legislature are working right now on the money that was part of the K-12 budget and trying to make some decisions. And I know that there's conversation around training for Common Core. We've used some federal monies that are called Title II that are set aside for professional development. That's all the money that we have for professional development right now. And that's what we're assuming we have for next year, unless more comes through from the state.
Okay, thank you. And how else will parents be able to learn more about the specifics around the Common Core?
As I said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel on some of this. So I know, for example, the National PTA has some great publications, and we found some other resources that we're sort of trying to sort through right now and figure out the timing of putting them out. I have a sort of a focus group of classroom teachers who know what they've been communicating and are giving some advice about what we're going to use as a district. I'm hoping to put together a focus group as well of parents to see what makes sense to you, because there's reams of information. We don't want to overwhelm, and we want to make sure that we give information without drowning people in it.
Thanks. How are higher thinking skills assessed?
Well, I'll just give the example that of the constructed response there, that anytime you're writing, it's a higher level thinking exercise, because you need to be processing and putting together your own thoughts and putting them on paper. So just the fact that the Smarter Balance is asking questions that ask students to read something and think about it, actually write in their own words and not just pick an answer, is a higher level exercise. The one that you saw up there in terms of finishing a story, it's basically, it's making a prediction or a hypothesis about what could happen afterwards. So as I said, what we're trying to do also is line our end-of-course assessments, which have traditionally for us aligned with the ISAT, so they've been multiple choice. So we're working to find ways to assess those questions. We're also learning about how to put together questions that don't just get at the knowledge level, but get at some of the meatier parts of thinking, where students have to put together and construct their knowledge rather than just take a fact and as I said, give a one-shot answer.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to do my best with...
Can I just read my questions off?
And we would prefer if you pass them on to a board member. I'll do my best to read this one. Will the K-12 qualifications and standards for PE, music, art educators be the same as those as to teach the core curriculum expectations. I'm hoping I got that mostly right.
So
There's a little.
in all the subjects that, other than math and English language arts right now, I mentioned early on that the task is to try to figure out how can I be supportive of literacy and math skills as well, because certain subjects such as science might fit well with mathematics. But right now, that's our task, to figure out how to integrate those into the current standards, which are based on Idaho state standards. As I said, the only ones that we know of that are coming are science and social studies for Common Core. And I haven't heard any word about moving into a Common Core in those other subjects, but I never say never anymore.
Thank you.
And I would add that we would really want to see transdisciplinary units developed so that what the students were learning in English language arts or science or math could in fact then be copied into maybe the PE and the health curriculum or the art and the music curriculum, because those crossovers really make meaning more relevant and really anchor the learning for students.
There's two questions here. I think that one's probably the easiest.
Who developed the Common Core? Good question.
Well, I mentioned in the presentation that there were a number of stakeholders. I don't have names with me. I can certainly send, if the patron has given his or her name, I can certainly send information about that. There was on the very last slide I had. If Laura can pull that back up, that's the best resource. Actually, the Common Core's website will tell you all the information you want to find. So if you have internet access, you can actually get it right here in the library. That's the best place to find it. It's www.corestandards.org. There were hundreds of people involved in developing this.
Thank you. And we have an additional question, which I'll pass on your way for further review, and you might have an opportunity to visit about it later, but I think we're getting the signal here to move on to our next topic. So.
Our third topic involves a finance and facilities construction update by District Chief Operating Officer Wendell Wardell. Mr. Wardell joined the school district in June of 2012 as Chief Operating Officer. Prior to that, he was the Chief Finance Officer and Business Manager for the Community Library District headquartered in Hayden. Prior to coming to Idaho in 1997, he served as President of Bromar, Arizona. He spent 29 years as a food broker operating in the western half of the U.S., Alaska, and Hawaii, retired in 1997. He served in the U.S. Air Force the last 2 years as commanding officer of a combat security police squadron in Vietnam, and he is a retired school board trustee serving School District 2 in Billings, Montana for 3 years. Join me in giving Mr. Wardell a warm welcome.
What they didn't put down is it also said he has no known retirement skills. At least that's according to my wife. So if we can leap on in, there's a lot that you can talk about in finance and school finance, and it's exciting. But I want to circle back to the Levy presentation on the M&O that Superintendent Bauman did. And you'll hear us say throughout the next 7 weeks as we reach out to the community about the M&O that the district has a $3 million shortfall. And we want to be really, really clear that this M&O levy does not fill that hole. We have that hole to fill through our budgeting process in the spring when we sit down with our administrators and our department heads and build our budgets. In fact, I salute Maureen Dolan. She's here tonight, but she wrote a marvelously accurate article about how we got to where we are with a $3 million shortfall. The district very carefully budgeted the one-time funds over a 3 to 4 year period. The last of it was used up. It was $1.8 million. The district also has been using its fund balance to stave off this kind of a hole. And the last of the fund balance $1.2 million is in the current budget. So there is no more savings account to go to. It's like when you go to your savings account, because you're in and you're out are a little bit different and a little bit off. There is no more fund balance to go to. So our budgeting process will, as it evolves, will take into account the $3 million shortfall, and that $3 million shortfall will be done when we are ready to present to the board our FY14 budget and be passed in June. It will take a lot of skill to do the budgeting, and it will probably, from time to time, challenge us all to stay friends inside the district. It's not fun when you have this kind of a problem. I would salute, again, keep in mind that I arrived in June, but I have had an opportunity to work with the district in finance since '08, and I salute the district about how skillfully they manage the federal funds. Some districts around the country saw it as manna from heaven, and their approach was, well, if we use this up, there'll be more, and there wasn't. And this district very carefully budgeted over a period of time, hoping that the state funding would return, and it has not. The state funding for FY14, early stages right now, doesn't look like it will change at all from FY13, which I guess the point I would make is our operating costs are not static. They are dynamic. That means simply that they go up. And so when the state stays static with our support, the whole evolves, and you manage through it. Now, I will say this, so far it's pretty exciting for FY13. The board will hear me report on Monday that we are running slightly about 10% below budget pace, which means that with 50% of the time elapsed, we've spent about 40% of our budget. That's pretty exciting. We've got some pretty solid cost controls in place because we hope to be able to offset some of that $3 million shortfall just by internally managing ourselves as efficiently as we can. But I'll just kind of cover the whole slide. The $7 million hasn't come back. We're managing ourselves carefully, but there is a $3 million shortfall that must be dealt with as we put our budget together. And that's with the successful passage of the M&O. Right behind this slide are the footprints. I'm going to go over to facilities, specifically the bonds. And there's so much to talk about the bonds that I had to rein myself in. Right behind this slide are the footprints for 4 of the 5 remodel schools. The one footprint there is not one for is Winton Elementary, and we're working through a process on Winton. As you may recall, when the district came to the community with the $32 million request for funds to remodel and update these schools, we indicated then that Winton was going to be a challenge. We didn't know which would be the most cost efficient. I'm not talking fast enough, am I, Dean? Okay, well, the next 4 slides are quick. But we have some decisions to make on Winton, and it'll start with the Winton community meetings in March. So we're into stage 3 with Canfield and Sorensen. I've laid out what the stages are there. One is when they listen to the school community, and then they develop what they hear and determine what our priorities are at stage 3. And I want to knock this down right away because there will be a rumble that runs through the community, or could be, that says, gosh, Canfield's $1.3 million over budget and Sorensen is $600,000 over budget. This is a normal stage where we've developed everything that everybody ever dreamed that they wanted. And now we come back to our priorities, which we said was classrooms first. And we evolve the construction into the budget. We made a promise to the community that each project would stand on its own, doesn't borrow from another, and that we would be at or under budget when we were done. I want to say, too, we said then, and I'll say it again now, we'll say it in the future, we have 3 gyms in the process. All 3 of those gyms will be bid as alternates, what they call an alternate bid, if the bid's come in properly, and this is Canfield. The yellow is the new and the remodel, the gym you see on the end. If the bids come in from the general contractors and we can take on those gyms, then we expect to, and we expect that to happen. But we have to protect the taxpayer and ourselves by having that as a bid alternate. But that's an advanced look at what Canfield's looking like right now. We're quite along the way, because my dream, which is a dream because I don't think the snow will get off the ground, but I'd like to see us in the ground in March, but we're hoping for early spring or into spring. We'll be into the ground and underway. And this will be Sorensen as an advanced stage right now. Again, both of these projects are still being massaged. They are the phase 1 projects. And these are our priorities. Fix the classrooms still is commitment to stay inside each project's budget. Add alternates on the gyms. This helps us keep our priorities straight, keep our costs under control, guides us through the process. So where are we with Borah and Bryan? We're at stage 1 and 2, listening to the school community and developing what we hear. And I said about Winton, the process is evolving. It's our most difficult decision, whether we remodel or rebuild. These are early stage of, which one? Borah? Okay. The green is remodel and yellow is new. And again, this will be an add alternate on that gym. And I say early stage because we started this architect 3 months behind the other, thinking in terms of getting into the ground on these two in next September. We have 5 HVAC projects, and we're along the way on those. The engineers, electrical or HVAC engineer has been selected, well underway. We have some really exciting news coming back from him, where we see some cost savings in our projects, and that's going to help us a lot with the 5 remodel schools. He is also a prime mechanical engineer on the 5 remodel schools, as well as the 5 what we call HVAC projects. Asbestos removal, we kept that out of any and all scope of work and projects, and are doing managing this internally, in the sense that we have put a contract, or we will be awarding a contract with the board's approval on Monday night for all asbestos removal. And this was purposeful because we chose to not pay what we expected would be an upcharge if we had asbestos inside of the contracts, and it can be phenomenally upcharged because asbestos is very unknown in the walls. Technology projects, we're marching along. All 17 facilities are impacted by that. Our VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol, RFP is out, and we have a 28-day period on that, and surveillance cameras are on our radar screen to develop. We moved them forward. And then classroom technology will evolve. Just a quick comment about the bonds. And the funding from the bonds currently sits down in Boise in what's called the LGIP, or Local Government Investment Pool, which pays small amounts of interest. We are in the process of establishing a network of banks to move our funds locally. It's a function of, because the amount is so much, we can have a negative impact on a bank if we move lots in and then we move it out in big chunks when we start paying bills. So we're being pretty careful about having it spread wide enough to not hurt anybody. Go ahead, Laura. Oh, I must be out. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wardell.
Yes.
We already have a couple questions in.
Sure.
The first question is by Krista Hazel. Will there be an opportunity for patron input on the school designs before the blueprints are finalized for the 5 schools to be remodeled? And
the answer is yes. We have not reached the stage where we bring the blueprints and actual mock-ups out to the schools, but they will be brought out to the schools for that particular community, but all community, to put in their 10 cents worth.
And if I might, we have 2 dates already established.
Oh,
Might as
great.
well get those out. We will have on Wednesday, February the 6th, so that's coming right up, Canfield Middle School will host an open house at 5 o'clock, so that patrons, parents can go to Canfield, walk what it looks like, and see it in its present form, and then meet with the architects and look at the preliminary drawings, give their input, their thoughts and their ideas as to how we could improve that. And then we'll follow that with a community chat about the upcoming M&O levy at 6 o'clock. So that's coming up Wednesday the 6th. And then Monday, February the 25th, we will follow the same format, 5 o'clock, with an open house at Sorensen, walk the building, look at the preliminary plans, give input, and then again follow that with a community chat about the M&O levy at 6 o'clock. And we will follow that plan with Borah and Bryan later in the summer, early fall, and also Winton when we get down the road.
We also have a question from Fred Wohler. I hope I pronounced the last name correctly. The first of the questions is, how can we, the school district, afford the new office?
New office is being funded by selling real estate. It's all capital funds. We have approximately $1 million in our capital fund right now that's pointed towards that. We expect to conclude our real estate dealings with the city over Persons and Bryan Playfield in the near future, which will add another amount of funds, and we have negotiations underway on another piece of real estate to sell. At that point in time, we'll have paid for the district office.
And I'll ask one more question from Mr. Wohler's questionnaire, if there aren't any other questions from the audience. The question is do we need, does the district need a staff of 65 as represented in the paper?
It was interesting to see if somebody pick up on that. That staff of 65 consists of headquarters staff as well as people who are out in all the schools reaching out as instructional aides, special ed aides, but they have a headquarters point, and it's the district office where they're directed by their appropriate department director.
For instance, in that 65 are school psychologists that they don't stay in the district office. They're out in the buildings, testing students, working with students. I believe we have about 8 school psychologists. Our school nurses are included in that 65. We have 9 school nurses that are out in the buildings giving shots to children with diabetes, administering inhalers and for asthma, taking care of the health of our children. We do have a lot of children with medical needs. Also, our speech and language pathologists are in that 65. They're giving direct services to children who have speech and language difficulties. And we have instructional coaches. How many of those do we have, Matt? About
5 gen ed and 2 special ed.
7 of those who are working in buildings, working with teachers, supporting them in improving their craft. So a large number of that 65 are not administrators. They are, in fact, direct service providers to children or support for teachers.
Excellent, thank you. We're out of time on this topic. We'll move on to our fourth topic.
And our fourth topic is school safety, which I know has been on the forefront of many of our minds here in Coeur d'Alene and all over the nation. And we're going to start this off with Superintendent Bauman, and we all may pitch in up here at the panel to contribute to that conversation. Remember, if you have any questions during this, to please pass them to the end of the row, and a CEP board member will pick up any questions that you have.
Thank you, Amy. Certainly the conversation has changed about school safety since December, although it has always been on our minds. And we, in the Coeur d'Alene School District, take it very, very seriously and have for a number of years. And I'll take a point of privilege in saying that David Rawls, who you know I have fondness for, when he came to the school district in 1997, he had been the superintendent in Moses Lake, where a school shooting had occurred under his watch. And so with him, he brought a very keen awareness of the need to develop what we call a school emergency response plan. And we developed that plan back in 97, 98, and frankly, we have been very dedicated to keeping that plan current and making sure that we practice that plan, and that includes things like lockdowns and drills to make sure that if there ever was such a horrendous event as happened in Connecticut, that we would be as well prepared as possible. But after Connecticut, we started realizing that our facilities themselves had some particular weak points to them, and that while we were nibbling away at improving those facilities with our general maintenance budget and a little bit of money out of things like the levy or the bond, that really it was a 10-year project, and yet the health and safety of our kids is right here today, both the physical as well as the psychological safety. And so over the Christmas break, we met with law enforcement officials and developed by walking through, and many of them are very, very familiar with our schools because the school resource officers are in our schools on a regular basis. They knew where our weak points were, and they helped us establish a priority list of areas that needed to be improved. We also some of the trustees walked through the buildings with me. Others had been in the buildings a lot and knew and were intimately familiar with the weaknesses. And from those dialogues, also with principals, we asked each principal to give us a list of the areas in their building that they knew was a vulnerable spot. We developed a plan and penciled out the costs. Mr. Wardell and Mr. Martin penciled out the cost, and then we presented that to the trustees, and they agreed to add $1.4 million to the first year of the levy, specifically for capital improvements across all 17 buildings. Sometimes I got questions, is this just secondary? No, it's elementary, middle, and high school, to improve the facility structures for safety. Now, there's another component to safety, and we know that, and that's mental health. That's making sure there's enough eyes and ears of caring adults in our schools, looking out for the mental health issues of our children, and also, frankly, to be aware of the mental health issues in the community, since that can also impinge on our school safety. And I will say, and then I'll open it up to other thoughts, there's no plan that will guarantee 100%, unfortunately, that every child will be safe every moment, every day. There just isn't an ability to do that, short of turning our schools into fortresses or prison-like structures, and I don't think any of us want to have that happen. But what we'll do with this $1.4 million will be really be able to make some deterrents so that anybody thinking that we're an easy target will be dissuaded that we are not an easy target, that there will be things in place that will make it more difficult, more of a burden to come in and do bad things. So with that, I'll let Wendell or whoever wants to.
I think what I'd add to that is that the $1.4 million is focused on capital expenditure. There are no people expenditures. It's been reported that we are expanding our SROs, and we were fortunate enough that the Coeur d'Alene Police Department was able to layer in an SRO service at Canfield when the students returned to school after winter break in January, and now we're even more fortunate as they've been able to designate the SRO officer, and they'll have a permanent SRO officer beginning literally Friday. We've also built plans for 2 additional SROs that will be focused towards the elementary sector. All of this, we are developing the budgeting inside of our budgets for the next 3 years to put it in place. But the $1.4 million will not deal with SROs. That is separate and apart and will be inside of the district's budget.
Okay, I am guessing we may have several questions from the audience on school safety. So again, I'll remind you to pass your questions to the end, and a board member will be there by to pick them up. If not, we have a couple of questions to keep conversation going, and I'll start with, can you give some more specific details without exposing law enforcement and student safety on how the $1.4 million will be used to make capital enhancements to our school buildings?
Certainly. We established 4 general areas that the money will go towards improving safety and security. First is perimeter security, and as you might guess, that would include fencing and gates and doors, and making sure that that entry into our campuses is limited. It's not just a complete open opportunity. And as you know, many of our campuses are large. The 2 large high schools are over 40 acres. And so that's a little bit of a challenge with many, many points of entry. So we'll be limiting the points of entry and also making sure that the playing fields and the campus as a whole is as secure as possible. Another area of safety and security is surveillance cameras. And as you could see in Mr. Wardell's presentation, the bond itself we were ahead of the game and ahead in our thinking, and we had planned for and budgeted for surveillance cameras across the district. The levy will allow us to even upgrade some of the surveillance cameras and make sure that they are tied into the Coeur d'Alene Police Department's software system so that they will have access and be able to see into our buildings. Another area is protection and isolation, and that's, again, really looking at doors, making sure they lock from the inside, so that when we go into a lockdown, right now many of our buildings, the teacher has to step out into the hallway to lock the door to their classroom, and that would not be a good situation at the point of a tragedy or an intruder. So that will interior locking doors. And then also at the main point of entry, we are wanting very much to have a system where people have to identify themselves if they're coming onto campus into the building, and we'll have a buzz-in system similar to that which you see often in hospitals and other areas. And then finally, we will go to a proxy card entry system. And I think the best analogy I can come up with a proxy card is the kind of thing you get in a hotel. And that, so we'll move away from keys and be moving to proxy cards. That provides a wonderful record of who is entering the building, how long they're staying. Those cards can be activated and deactivated remotely. And so our ability to manage entry into a secured door will be greatly enhanced with those proxy cards. Did I miss any of it?
You got them all.
Well, Hazel alluded to the entries themselves, but one of the things that we're focusing on also, and if you look at some of the plans that were up on Wendell's PowerPoint, as well as if you look at Canfield, we're trying to figure out how to have the line of sight when visitors come into the building, because a number of our buildings right now, the office is not near where the entrance is. And so luckily, a couple that are already in process projects are able to incorporate that. But we're also looking at that for all of our 17 sites to ensure, again, that we can see who's coming and going from the office.
Well, we had a couple questions come in. So the first one is, when it comes to school safety, a school bus is an easy target, just as in Alabama yesterday. A school bus driver was shot and killed trying to keep his students safe.
And I think the answer to that is yes. I think we will see some more training evolve for our school bus drivers. I applaud that particular school bus driver because he specifically refused the gunman's demands, as you probably all know. I would believe that our bus drivers are that brave and that determined to protect their cargo. But there's some work that we need to do with the school bus drivers to help them be safe. And there's some ideas noodling around in my head that don't have lots of dollars, but do have lots of impact.
We also are talking about adding more surveillance cameras to school buses too, which I don't know that surveillance cameras provide more safety, but it's a deterrent because forensically then police are able to go back and catch the bad guys, and that word gets out, and so consequently the deterrent is there.
There's a second part to this. Shouldn't part of this conversation include having good, loyal, and well-trained bus drivers as opposed to lower-waged, privatized drivers?
Well, we want to get into a conversation that we're not going to get into, but I know there's a lot of bus drivers. I recognize you, see you out there. So let me be really clear. I am the one that's writing the RFP to quantify the cost savings, if there is any. Where it is right now is it still hasn't left my desk because I got occupied with safety for a while. It will continue to be written. It will go through legal, and it will then go out to the industry to determine what, if any, savings are available to the district. As to addressing the question, I don't think it's addressable. I expect that our bus drivers are as loyal as ever. I will just touch briefly is that every industry source I've ever talked to indicates that they have a strong desire to hire our bus drivers if we were to privatize. So I would assume that it'd be the same safe, loyal bus drivers that we have now.
Thank you. Bryan's office is in the center of the school, Bryan Elementary. How long until this is fixed? Second question is, also the gates are often left open.
Bryan remodel will start this fall, and I'm not sure how long that will take. I think the architect would be able to maybe be more precise about the construction timeline, but that office will be moved in the remodel so that that line of sight that Matt was talking about for the safety and security of people entering into the building will be remedied through that remodel. And the gates being left open, that's an area, you know, there's two areas, right? There's capital improvements, which sort of is simple in some ways, although expensive. But what is even more complex is that making sure that our staff is keenly aware and tuned into the things such as gates being left open or doors not being locked, and that's a training issue. And we have 1,200 people in our school district, and we have turnover every year. Every year we have 20, 30, 40 new teachers that join us and about the same number of new support staff. So that makes it incumbent upon us to make sure we have a constant training component about safety and security measures such as gates being left open and the ability to conduct efficient and effective lockdown drills, fire drills, and we will continue to work to improve that. We'll probably never be perfect, but we'll sure give it the old college try.
We have a few more minutes, and we have a couple questions here that aren't necessarily on topic with school safety. So we'll circle back to a question that appears to address both finance issues and perhaps the M&O levy, and perhaps this implicates some state funding questions, some state funding issues. The question is how can the district continue to return to the taxpayers to fill the gap for budget issues and shortfalls?
How can we, or why?
How can we? I'm assuming why.
Okay. I hope I'll get the intent of the person asking the question here. I don't want to answer the question logistically when I think it's maybe more a philosophical question. Yeah. I think that educators and trustees must aim high for the quality of education that children are going to be given in a community. And then it's up to the community to say yes or to say no. And our ability to provide a quality education to the 10,200 boys and girls would be very, very limited if we just relied on the money coming from the state. It really would not provide that extra quality piece that we have come to know and appreciate and frankly get used to in our system. For instance, let me give you a couple of for instances. At our high schools, we have a wide array of electives. And so your children and your grandchildren that go to our high schools can choose between taking French or Spanish or German. In smaller districts who aren't able to have as robust an M&O levy as we do, that may be one language or none, or no languages. Similarly, in the fine arts, we have a wonderful fine arts program that starts in elementary school and winds its way through and culminates with orchestra and band and choirs in the high schools. And that build of those fine arts programs, visual and performing arts, is something that we can provide to the boys and girls in Coeur d'Alene that you wouldn't see in other districts without the community support. The recruitment and the retaining of highly qualified teachers is another piece. We do pay more than the state salary schedule, and I'm not apologizing for that because I know that the expectation of this community is that we recruit and retain as high quality a teacher and support staff too, including secretaries, bus drivers, lunch, our food service people. And so again, that quality piece is added. We have 9 nurses in our school system that provide needs, as I mentioned earlier, for our medically fragile children. I know of school districts that are half our size that you would think, well, they should have 4.5, and they have 1 nurse. And so consequently, the children can't come to school as often because their medical needs can't be met. So those are just a few examples of why we come to the community every 2 years and say, we think we're providing value added if you'll support us with your taxes.
I think we have time for one last question before we wrap up. Why did the board district not set levy amount to cover shortfall?
We talked about that quite a bit, and we had some impassioned pleas from constituents and from staff to add more money to the levy. And I think ultimately it becomes a balancing act that you have to decide as a group of trustees and with the input from administration of how much can the taxpayer bear. And for every person that thinks that you should raise the levy, there's at least one, if not more, that thinks that there shouldn't be any levy at all. And so we have to sort of hit that happy ground of saying, are we asking for enough to not decimate the school district and maintain as many of the programs as we know are important, but not too much that the chance of the levy failing, which would be absolutely devastating, would happen. And when I look at that statistic that 21% of our general fund is in the levy now, and I compare it to other districts across the state, I find that unfortunately the Coeur d'Alene School District is now in the unenviable position of being in the top quartile of school districts with such a large levy. And that gives me, frankly, heart palpitations, because if it were ever to go down, we would be in such a world of hurt. So that balancing act of asking for enough so that we have quality provided to our kids and to our community, but not too much that we push the taxpayers' generosity beyond the pale. And we have to remember that this is right on the heels of the $32.7 million bond that was passed in August. And that weighed heavily on my decision-making, and I know it weighed heavily on the trustees' decision-making too. So, you know, is it a precise science in setting the levy amount? No, but I really do think that we weigh a lot of things in making that decision.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time tonight, but we would like to sincerely thank the district administration for coming out and offering this opportunity to the community to learn firsthand about the important issues facing our district today. We would also like to thank you, the members of the community, for taking your time tonight to come visit with us and engage the school district in a positive way to support public education. We also challenge parents, community members, businesses to remain engaged in the important public education dialogue by joining Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership and by marking your calendar for our next community event that we're happy to announce tonight. This will be a nonpartisan board trustee debate in April. So you can find more information on that leading up to the event at cdaep.org. And again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight.